On this episode of Bleak, we will be discussing the 2018 murder of Kelsey Berreth. Buckle your seatbelts. There's no light at the end of this tunnel. Things are about to get bleak.
Hello, Mrs. Doubtfire. How are you?
I'm having deja vu to a past episode.
Oh, should we say that again?
No.
Should we do that again?
No, we don't need to.
Why? I don't even know what we're doing.
Laura's back, everybody!
I'm back at the ranch!
Yay! No more solo boring Amanda episodes.
Life's been a little crazy, but we're turning a corner.
Laura is hard to book her time, I will say.
Yes, I'm just so popular.
I thought I might have to have like a guest co-host pretty soon, but it didn't end up having to be the case.
No.
So, I was thinking we could do this episode in a British accent.
No. Everyone tells me my British accent sounds like an Australian.
And you know we actually do have European listeners, so they probably don't want to hear that.
They probably don't. No.
So, we won't do that.
Not very likely, no, because I sound Australian.
They might turn it off at that point.
They may.
In Southern accents, I hear people don't like it when Northerners try to impression Southerners.
No, I don't think I can. I don't do accents very well in general.
Hey, y'all.
Yeah. Hey, y'all. Yeah, like I can't even.
It's like when I listened to the Alec Murdaugh trial. I'm like,
yeah.
These are American people? So Alec Murdaugh. It's like
what is it? How do you actually pronounce his name?
His name is not Alex, apparently. It's
but
Alec.
But it's Alex Murdaugh. Not Alec Murdaugh, or whatever they're saying. Alec Murdaugh.
Oh, that's a real shit show.
Yes, it is. What the heck?
Yeah, he's a real Emmy Award winner.
Yeah, that's just so bizarre, and how he got away with that much carnage. It's like, no.
Well, I mean, it's your garden variety classic rich white man syndrome.
Exactly.
That's why. I mean.
Well, yeah. I mean, he thought he was above the law, but the thing is, he was.
Well, yeah. For many years, he has been living above the law.
Yes.
Exactly.
Just kill whoever you want and
things will go
cash
away.
in whatever you want and whatever.
We'll see if it. You might say, well, it finally caught up with him, but the verdict's not there yet.
No.
There are people that are actually convinced by him, which is just insanity to me.
Yeah, there's
this is so overwhelming. But anyway, that's not the case we're here to discuss today.
No, I could go on and on about that.
Yeah, that's for its own episode sometime.
Yeah, how lost of reality almost all of the people are in that
saga. Yes.
Saga.
I do feel an extra place in my heart for those boat victims or the people that were on that boat.
I do too. I definitely do too. But they were all kind of participating in that lifestyle. You know what I mean? They knew how bad he was. I don't know. I feel terrible for them.
I just feel like at 19 or 20 years old, it's easy to say that now for me as like a 39-year-old woman with a lot of life experience.
Right.
But at that time in my life, I might not speak up, It's hard to do that.
It is. It is hard. And a victim is a victim, and I think that to whatever degree they were all victims, and it was all horrible, and of course
it's like they sound like they knew he shouldn't have been driving, but it's like nobody,
they couldn't stop him. It was almost like they couldn't stop him, I feel like.
And then he became abusive when they tried to, so
yeah.
Anyhow, we're going to be discussing the murder of Kelsey Berreth. This has been widely covered by a lot of, I've seen it on a lot of programs. However, I've not seen it on or heard it on a lot of podcasts. It's a wild story.
I don't know this one.
A wild story. It's very horrible and heartbreaking, but it's like one of those, like, kind of leave your jaw on the floor a little bit, which we've had other ones like that, but this is its own story. So I think we're going to get started.
Okay.
If that works.
Yeah, it works for me.
All right. So Kelsey Berreth, at the time of her murder, was 29 years old, and she was living in Woodlynn Park, Colorado, which is a smaller town. I don't have the population. It's not, I don't think it's like small town, like 1,000 people, but it's definitely not like, a major metropolis or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's west of Colorado Springs, has a very low crime rate. She was actually a transplant from Washington State, so she was born in Washington. Okay. She's described she loved the outdoors, and a dream of hers someday was to own her own ranch.
Oh.
Kind of gives you an idea of the type of girl she was.
The outdoorsy.
And, she was a tomboy, described as a tomboy. She actually grew up on a farm, which was a huge part of her identity. Mm-hmm. And she loved airplanes. And what kind of started her love for airplanes was actually watching the crop dusters on her farm.
Oh, okay.
So that was like her first experience with that. Mm-hmm. She actually became a professional pilot in her early 20s, not like a commercial... Not flying commercial airliners, but just like small planes.
Yeah.
And so everything, in her life was kind of going as she wanted, except for she was looking for love, as many people at that age are. So she's in her mid-20s, and she's kind of just feeling like a void, like, she'd wanted to be a mom at some point and wanted a family, and she just didn't have that. So... she decides to go on a dating app, as many people do. This wasn't that long ago.
Tinder, whatever.
No, she chose farmersonly.com.
Oh.
So
okay. Well,
she was looking for somebody who could relate. And it is a culture. Farming is its own thing.
It is.
So she was looking for somebody that could understand that lifestyle. When you live on a farm, I would imagine, you wake up, you have to tend to crops and animals.
Right.
And
it's not for everybody.
Oh, that's for sure. And I just thought it was hilarious that there is a only farmers dating site, but yes, I guess there's something for everybody.
There is. I mean, you could have an only anything dating site. Only what?
Yeah, only anything, really.
Right.
So that on this dating site for the farmers, she meets a man named Patrick Frazee.
Okay.
And Patrick and her hit it off online right away. He actually lived in a different state. At this point, she's in Washington. And he's described as kind of your all-American rugged cowboy type. He was a tall, stereotypically good-looking guy. And he actually lived on a large ranch, which, that's definitely part of Kelsey's vision for her future.
Right.
So at the time they met, like I said, Patrick was living in Colorado, and Kelsey was living in Washington. So they were about 1,200 miles apart. So it was a couple of months until they actually met in person.
Okay.
But from all accounts, they considered themselves like in a relationship during that time, even though they had only been speaking online.
Right. Which is kind of a modern romance, a lot, that happens. People do that.
I have my own opinions on that. My thought is I don't know that you can necessarily really know how someone is if you've never met them in person.
Right. I don't think so, but people feel that they can. So.
Yeah, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'm just saying I guess that wouldn't be for me, but
no, not me either.
I'm not saying the online thing I think is fine, but I just think I don't know that how you could say like you're really in a relationship. But relationship's not all physical either. So
that's true.
Anyhow, the reason that's relevant is because so about 2 months into the relationship, Patrick flew to Washington to meet Kelsey in person.
Okay.
And they got engaged on that first trip.
Wow.
So it was like whirlwind, very quick.
Let's get engaged.
Kelsey's parents, although they liked Patrick, were kind of shocked.
Oh, I'm sure if my kid did.
They were a little bit like, wow.
This is...
I think they were concerned a bit as well because they were like, you just met this guy in person. But in
Right.
Kelsey's mind, she's like, well, we've been in together. She considered that the online dating prior to meeting
Was
as
part
part of their relationship.
Okay, sure.
So they didn't, they didn't want to make a huge deal of it to the point that it would like push her away,
Right.
but they were concerned.
Of well, yeah. What parent wouldn't be in that scenario?
Yeah.
Yes.
So she actually decides to move because now they're engaged. Engaged. She decides to move to Woodlynn Park, Colorado, to be with Patrick.
Okay.
So she moves to Colorado, which.
Well, I mean, it's probably good they see each other more than once.
Well, exactly, and
You know.
someone if they're gonna be together, someone's
Right.
gonna have to move somewhere.
Right.
I mean, you can't just have you guys. I mean, I suppose you could, but
Not if you want to be a mom or a dad. I
Right.
mean, that's, that's not gonna work.
So yeah, so she ends up moving there. So sorry, I'm trying to figure out here where I left off. So Kelsey gets a job in Colorado pretty quickly as a instructor pilot at a company called DOS Aviation. So
Okay.
she's not having any issues or trouble with like her professional life. She gets a job right away and I think was making a decent living. So in early 2017, so this is not too long after she had moved out there, she finds out she's pregnant. And she's very excited. They were not married yet at this point, but she
Sure.
didn't seem to be too bothered by that.
No.
And
She wanted this.
She
I mean,
wanted it, and
you know.
according to everyone around them, Patrick seemed just as happy as she did about the baby.
Perfect.
And she finds out she's having a baby girl and gives birth to a baby girl in the fall of 2017.
Excellent.
So at this point, they had been together, now she had gotten pregnant, had the baby. So they've been together for close to a year.
Right.
And they had considered themselves engaged from very early on, but Kelsey started to notice that Patrick really wasn't, like, in any hurry to get married.
Oh, sure.
And she, they actually, initially she was living on the ranch with Patrick, but
Yeah.
Patrick's mother actually lived on the ranch as well.
Oh.
And she just didn't like Kelsey for whatever reason.
Oh.
So Kelsey didn't feel like it was a comfortable situation for her to live there. And even
No.
though she had always wanted to live on a ranch, I think she wanted it to be her ranch, not
Right.
moving into somebody else's ranch.
Right.
So
like her and her significant other's ranch
Right.
together, not
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 someone,
with-
not an established ranch.
right.
Yes. So that was frustrating for Kelsey, and so at some point she ended up moving to a townhome
Sure.
about 30 minutes away from Patrick's ranch.
She was like, can't do this.
Right, and that's a tough thing to live with your in-laws.
It
Regardless,
is.
they could be the nicest people in the world.
Right.
It's still really
Even
difficult.
to move back in with your parents. I mean, we did that once when we were buying our last house, and it's not fun.
No, and it's nothing to do because we did this as well for a year, and it was
Right.
much harder than I anticipated. There were a lot of things that I didn't
Right.
take into account beforehand, and this is nothing against anybody.
Right.
They could be the nicest
It's
people in the world, but it's a tough thing to do.
Because everyone has their established routines, their established family,
And
or
just, like-
not family, even just well, yeah. I mean, what you do as a unit.
And you don't
You
want
know
to
what I
be
mean?
judged. There's things that go on behind closed doors, and I'm not saying it's anything bad.
Right.
I'm not talking about like abuse or anything, but
Right.
like you just that you feel like you can't really necessarily be yourself.
Right. You can't let
And-
go and
Yeah.
and say or do things.
Because
that,
especially
yeah.
with in-laws, you kind of might feel like you're being judged.
Right.
And so I totally get that.
Absolutely.
So in August of 2018, that's where we're at now in the timeline, Kelsey reported just being really stressed, and she just was not, she was kind of getting frustrated with the situation with Patrick,
Yeah.
not wanting to, she wanted to like start planning the wedding, but when the other person doesn't seem real into it.
So she's in this townhome. They're not even living together.
No, and they have the baby, and they're kind of the baby's like it's almost like they're a divorced couple because they're sharing custody of the baby. Kind of like he'll go pick the baby up and bring. It sounded like he was a decent father.
Right.
In terms of like taking care of his daughter, like he could be trusted with the daughter. Right. There was no issues with that.
He was afraid something would happen.
No, so. And this does become a bit relevant later on. So she ends up going on a retreat to California for, was it 2 weeks? I think it was around 2 weeks. And I think partially because she was in a position that she could, because she knew she could leave the baby with Patrick. Right. She was kind of feeling overwhelmed. So it was a retreat in California.
Right.
And then, so she returned from that retreat. Now, mind you, this entire time she's gone, she's in contact with Patrick.
Right.
The baby is only, a year old at this point, or 9 months, so it's not like she's talking to the baby on the phone. But, it wasn't like she went off on this retreat and then, didn't speak to anybody.
Right.
She was, in constant contact with her, and she talked with her parents, even though her parents lived in another state. She was really close with her mom. She was close to both her parents, but more specifically her mom. Right. And they talked frequently. It wasn't like something where she would go, I don't even think more than a day or two without talking to her mom. Right. Maybe a couple days here and there, but not much.
Yeah.
So once Kelsey returned from this retreat, she did say she felt like it was what she really needed.
Right.
She felt like she kind of regrouped. And some of the things that were bothering her, she was able to just kind of let it go, and just she just felt like it was helpful.
Right.
So that was in August, and then a couple of months passed, and now we're in Thanksgiving morning of 2018.
Okay.
So on Thanksgiving, Kelsey calls her mom. Her mom's name is Cheryl.
Yeah.
In Washington State that morning. And I'm just going to tell you a little bit about their conversation because it's one of the last times Kelsey's heard from. So Kelsey tells her mom she made some homemade cinnamon rolls, and she was proud of that, And then she says that she joked around because her baby was more interested in eating Cheerios than cinnamon rolls, and so they were just kind of having a casual conversation on the phone.
Yeah.
And then she tells her mom she's going to go to the Safeway grocery store to get some last minute supplies for Thanksgiving. And actually, I believe this might have been a day or two before Thanksgiving.
Right.
But it was
ready.
Near that time.
Yeah.
I believe that was actually November 22nd. And then, so a couple days passed by.
Yeah.
And Cheryl said that Kelsey actually Cheryl butt dialed Kelsey by accident on November 24th.
Okay.
So she didn't mean to call her. She just bumped her phone or whatever.
Yeah.
But because Kelsey had a missed call from Cheryl gets a text back from Kelsey that says, I'll call you tomorrow. Something like she's busy or whatever.
Yeah.
But Cheryl said, since I didn't even mean to call her, and then she responded, I didn't really think much of it when she didn't actually call me the next day.
Right.
Because in the text she said, I'll call you tomorrow, but then she never did.
Right.
But like I said, she didn't really mean to call her to begin with.
Right.
So about a week goes by, and Kelsey's mom, Cheryl, had not heard from her daughter. And at that point, she starts to get concerned because this is going on. A week is a long time for her not to hear from her daughter.
Yeah,
that's not normal.
Yeah.
So finally on December 2nd, so her last conversation in person was that, or they're not in person, but they were actually speaking on the phone, was November 22nd, and then she got that text on the 24th. But now we're at December 2nd, and Cheryl has not actually talked to her since the 22nd.
Right.
And then she had gotten the text message.
Yeah.
So Cheryl does contact the Woodlynn Park Police Department. I would imagine, and I didn't really get into this in the research I did, but I would imagine she had called Patrick too to say.
I'm sure she called Patrick.
Yeah.
I mean, she had to have. Because why wouldn't she?
And so she contacts the Woodlynn Park Police Department and requests a welfare check on her daughter and granddaughter.
Right.
She's in Washington, remember, so she can't obviously check herself.
Right.
So police officers perform a welfare check and they go into the house, and I believe Patrick let them in, like he had a key. And there's no signs of like foul play or anything like anything's happened to anybody, bad in the house. However, Kelsey's not there. And her daughter's not there, and then we find out later her daughter is actually with Patrick, but the mom doesn't. I think the mom knows that, but the police are coming and they're like, okay, she's not here, her daughter's not here,
right?
And then oddly, she had two vehicles and they were both in the parking, like in the driveway.
Oh wow!
So. And the only thing that wasn't there were her purse and her keys.
Okay.
So they really just did a cursory search. Now at this point, they don't have a search warrant. They have no reason to think. So someone's let them in the house. So they didn't They didn't spray luminol and do this big search. It was just let's look around. I mean, very cursory. Right. Just really not an intense search.
Right.
And one thing they kind of noted was that her toothbrush, her makeup, all her daily items that she would use were still there. Yeah. And they're like, well, if she went somewhere, you'd think she would have taken those things. Right. So it's an odd scene, but not necessarily alarming at this point.
Right.
So police do go to talk with Patrick after she had been not heard from for about 10 days. And Patrick tells police, and this was news to pretty much everyone, that he and Kelsey actually broke up.
Oh.
And he said, it was an amicable split and that they decided, they were going to co-parent their daughter. And
And during this time, Kelsey did not reach out to her family and say,
"No,
we broke up."
No, so that's bizarre. So they kind of ask him, when's the last time you saw her? And Patrick says he saw her on Thanksgiving Day. Okay. So according to this, Thanksgiving that year was on November 27th.
So it would have been 5-6 days.
Yeah.
5 days. Still.
He said on Thanksgiving that Patrick reported that they did a handoff of the baby outside of Kelsey's home. So Kelsey gave him the baby on Thanksgiving since now they're broken up.
Right.
So she gives him the baby because it's his turn to take her, type of a thing. So, he also says that Kelsey asked him if he could keep the baby for an undefined period of time.
Oh, that doesn't seem strange.
Yeah, so
indefinitely,
So...
Tell him whenever. I mean, that...
He said she just seemed like she wanted to kind of... she needed a break. However, this didn't, unfortunately, cause immediate super concern. I think her mom was concerned.
Right.
But for the police, because in August she had gone on that retreat and left the baby with Patrick, so then they're thinking, well, maybe there's something similar to that.
Right.
But the problem is, when she went on that retreat, she was in constant contact with her friends and family.
Right.
And Patrick, and now she's not.
Yeah.
So, Patrick reports, that he had gone to Walmart after the drop-off on Thanksgiving, and that he also had some contact with Kelsey through texts and calls for a few days after Thanksgiving. And then one of the texts they noticed was on November 23rd. Kelsey sent him a text that said, "Actually, do you mind keeping the baby tonight? I'm really stressed." And then a couple days later, she sent him a text that said, "Do you even love me?" So if you would read, according to the investigators, reading these texts, you would get the idea that Kelsey was struggling with like depression,
Right.
was
She's
very
depressed.
overwhelmed by parenthood,
Yeah.
that type of a thing.
Yeah.
But her, again, her mom and her were close, and her mom didn't even know her and Patrick had broken up, much
Right.
less that she was having struggles
As a mom.
So, of course, her mom is like, I don't know that she's necessarily suspicious of Patrick, but she's just feeling like something's not right.
Something's really off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Patrick brings up to the investigators that about a year ago, Kelsey was very depressed and threatened to harm herself with a gun, kind of trying to imply that maybe something like that is happening now.
Right.
Kelsey did own a firearm, just
Yeah.
one, and it was not found in her home. So, of course, they couldn't rule out a suicidal, ideation or attempt, exactly. So the next thing they did, because her vehicles were there, they searched her vehicles, and in the vehicle they found that Safeway receipt. Remember, her mom said she was going to be going there based on their phone conversation.
Yep.
So they were able to pull surveillance from the Safeway, and you can see if there's a video that you can see it's circulating, easy to find, of her in the Safeway with her babies, like in the baby carrier car seat.
Yeah.
And she's just getting some Thanksgiving groceries.
Right.
Another thing they saw was that her next door neighbor had surveillance cameras. Like, it would be like if your neighbor lived really close to you and their surveillance cameras were actually facing Kelsey's driveway.
Right.
So they're like, well, that maybe we should, check those out.
Yeah.
So, on November 22nd, which was Thanksgiving, November 24th, which was the last time was Thanksgiving, there's video of Patrick going into Kelsey's residence and leaving with the baby, which was consistent with what he said.
With the story.
He said they exchanged the baby on Thanksgiving.
Version.
And then he said that, he went shopping at Walmart after that, and they saw a video of him at Walmart shopping with the baby.
Right.
So his timeline is checking out at this point.
Right.
And so the next natural thing would be to get Kelsey's cell phone records. So those were obtained on December 3rd.
Okay.
Something very strange. So when the first thing they noticed on her cell phone records was on November 25th.
Yeah, so this is after.
Her phone is last active in Gooding, Idaho.
Oh.
So now Kelsey's family was living in Washington, which is borders Idaho, as we all know now from the case of Brian Koberger.
Yes,
I don't think, not that I didn't know they bordered each other, but you don't think of like people
No.
in Washington crossing over into Idaho.
Yeah.
But now when I saw that, I was
They
like,
do.
oh yes, I do know that
Yeah.
now
Yes.
because I've done so much on that case.
Yes.
But it's northern, so where they live near Spokane kind of borders with northern Idaho.
Right.
Because Washington's
sense.
north. But Gooding is like down in the south.
Oh.
Because their initial thought was maybe this has something to do, like she went to go visit her parents and she
Right.
decided to drive.
Right.
Or she drove like a rental or someone else's vehicle.
Yeah.
But when they were looking at where her phone pinged from in Gooding, Idaho, it was not a place that she would have driven through to get to her parents.
Right. Like it was completely out of the way.
Yes. It was, and, there was a specific route she would take if she were to see her parents, and she had never gone that way.
Right.
I don't even think it was anyone would go that way.
It wasn't, yeah.
Plus, her parents hadn't seen her, so
Right.
of course that doesn't make... And she's not going to just go visit them probably without telling them.
Right.
And they just didn't think it made a lot of sense. They thought it was very odd.
Yeah, it is.
And also the tower that Kelsey's phone connected with was in like a really vast open area that was associated with a state park.
Oh.
So it's not like
Murders, once you hear state park, it's
Yeah.
like, might not be looking
So
super.
it was an area that they really couldn't search due
Right.
to the vastness of it.
Right. You can't just pinpoint a certain
Right.
exact spot.
And so because now we're talking about crossing state lines,
Mm-hmm.
Colorado brings in the FBI
Oh, yeah.
because they have to, and they reach out to the Idaho police and ask the police in that area of Idaho to just kind of, because it's a small town,
Right.
they're like, to kind of give a description of her if you happen to see her in this area.
Right. Yeah, on the lookout.
Bolo, exactly. At this point, Kelsey's mom, Cheryl, is beside herself.
I'm sure it was devastating.
And,
I can't imagine being
her-
a mom.
She also had a brother, I don't know if he's older or younger, but his name's Clint. And they decided to stay in Colorado to try to help to find her.
Right.
And, they're just adamant. They're like, she didn't just walk away from motherhood. Like, there's just
Right.
no way.
They knew.
And, she said, Kelsey always kept in touch. So they actually decide to stay at her townhouse while they're in town.
Oh, sure.
I think they figure, if she comes back, we'll be here.
Right.
And, if they don't know how long they're going to be there, so they wouldn't have to pay for a hotel and that kind of thing as well.
Course. Yeah.
So on December 6th, the police department in Colorado receives a call from Clint Berreth, which is her brother.
Yeah.
And he's staying at the townhome, and he said, I was in the bathroom and I saw a dried bloodstain on the bottom of the toilet.
Oh.
Now,
Well.
that's not always that weird
No.
because, women bleed.
Women bleed. Men cut themselves shaving.
Yeah.
Women do too. I mean, it's like
That in and of itself
nosebleeds. in the
wouldn't
bathroom.
necessarily
No.
cause concern, but he said it just seemed like almost like it had been missed, like someone
Right.
had cleaned up and like it didn't really fit, with
Right.
even like when you're on your menstrual cycle, it's
Right.
maybe more like drops of blood, not
Right.
necessarily like
Like
a
spattering.
smear.
Right.
So he was thinking it was something.
Just seemed strange.
And so that blood stain enables them to get a search warrant for her townhome.
Okay.
So they were able to do like a full, they call it a CBI, so Colorado Bureau of Investigation search. And they ended up finding blood in multiple places in the bathroom, including the bathtub and the light switch. So then they started their search in the bathroom, and I think they had to do that because that's initially where the blood was found. And
Yeah.
then after they found the blood all over in there, then they could kind of go into other areas of the house.
Right.
They're actually kind of particular about search warrants and what you're
They
able
are.
to do.
You have to tell them specifically where you're going to go.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
think
and
people
what you're
always
looking for.
Right. You can't just you get a search warrant. It doesn't mean you necessarily
like, "Ooh,
can
the
just
whole
tear
house."
it out,
Yeah.
tear the house apart.
Yeah.
So I think that's like a misconception people have.
It is.
But that justified them to be able to search other areas of the house in the kitchen and the living room. And that's where investigators noticed that all over the furniture, the coffee table, she had like a leather chair. There were like these residue from cleaning products. Like someone had been in
sure.
there and really cleaned with like some real powerful chemicals,
Right.
and it left swipes
Right.
like of residue all over everything.
Right.
And they showed pictures of it on the show I was watching. So it wasn't like blood stains, it was just like these white marks.
Right.
Like
Where
some-
someone had been cleaning.
Yeah,
Intensely cleaning.
And it wasn't like normal. You know, like why would you scrub your leather chair down like that? You're probably not gonna do that.
Well, right. At least not on a regular unless it's super dirty or something. I don't know.
Well, and it was just, if you can find it online, but
Yeah.
you can see the swipe marks are very unusual.
You're right.
And they were able to determine that the blood on the toilet seat did match Kelsey's. Not necessarily surprising or alarming, but that
Right.
was something that they did see. Now, something unusual is multiple areas of the house, they actually found two unidentified DNA profiles, one male and one female.
Uh-oh.
that were not Kelsey's.
So they were not Kelsey.
So at this point, unfortunately, they're thinking something really bad has happened to her. But
her mom's there.
Her mom's there, but it's not her mom.
It isn't her
mom.
No. Oh, it's unidentified. Okay.
It's not her mom's. So it's a male and a female, and it's not Kelsey, and it's not her mom, and it's not her brother.
Okay.
So on December 15th, 2018, they had a major press conference, and they offered a $25,000 reward for any information. Kelsey's mom, Cheryl, kind of, she went on, made a plea, and they had a Facebook page set up, and she was real distraught. If you watch it, it's really horribly heartbreaking.
I'm sure it was awful.
So at this point, they were able to obtain a search warrant for Patrick Frazie's property.
Okay, that's good.
And that was conducted on December 14th and December 15th. And the only thing they really found were a lot of cleaning products, but they were not connected to Kelsey.
Oh. So it was just a separate cleaning project or something?
Yeah, I guess so. So they didn't really find anything in his search warrant. Now, they did were able to obtain his cell phone records, and I think, he hadn't necessarily done anything wrong, but the fact of he wasn't super cooperative, and he wasn't that concerned, even though, the baby was with him, and it just wasn't adding up with him. So they noticed when they got Patrick's cell phone records that he made many, many phone calls to one particular number.
Oh.
And you want to guess where that number, what state that number was? The person that lived there was in Idaho.
Ah.
So
who lives in Idaho?
Now, of course, this is significant because Kelsey's phone pinged in Idaho.
Right.
So I know what I'm like, that sentence I said didn't make a lot of sense.
Right.
But he was calling somebody who had a phone registered in Idaho.
Yeah.
So, and that's the last place Kelsey's phone had pinged when they got her phone records. They ended up being able to find out that phone number that he had been calling belonged to a woman named Crystal Kinney. So, of course, police want to interview Crystal Kinney to figure out why she's in such close contact with Patrick.
Well, right. Who is this Crystal Kinney? Is she a
friend,
a lover?
Exactly. So they bring in, now this FBI agent, his name is Jonathan Grusing. I've seen this guy in so many things. I don't know, he's a Colorado FBI agent, but for some reason, he's like so familiar to me.
That's funny.
I don't know if it's just...
Some of them really get quite the cases, and they're on the
I think he's been in a lot of different ones.
Yeah.
He's got... Anyway, that's neither here nor there, but I definitely recognized him. So Crystal Kinney lives in Twin Falls, Idaho.
Okay.
Very near where her phone last pinged. Where Kelsey's phone last pinged.
Okay.
So the FBI calls Crystal, and they ask her, they're like, well, we noticed... we're looking into the disappearance of Kelsey Berreth, who was engaged to Patrick Frazie. We noticed that Patrick Frazie and you have a lot of contact over the phone. What's going on with that?
Right.
Crystal says, I know Patrick, but he's a business partner.
Oh.
They find
what
out...
type of business?
Well, we'll get into that. Well, they find out that Crystal is a nurse, but she and Patrick own some horses together.
Oh. Okay, so it's a horse operation.
So, Crystal says she went to Colorado just before Thanksgiving to buy I believe it was to sell Patrick a horse.
Okay.
It was either a buy or sell. And then I believe it was to sell, though, because Crystal says when they met up, Patrick didn't come up with the money that he had agreed to come up with.
Okay.
So she said she didn't really have any other choice but to drive all the way back to Idaho. And it's like, he's going to let this girl drive all the way there knowing he doesn't have the money for her? It just doesn't make a lot of sense.
It does not make any sense at all.
So the FBI is immediately suspicious of her story.
Right. It just doesn't add up.
And Crystal also says she drove her good friend's Volkswagen sedan instead of her truck.
Why?
And they thought that was weird too. They're like, why do you need to borrow someone's vehicle to go buy a horse?
Right.
And it's a sedan, so it wasn't like she needed a bigger vehicle. This is just like a regular car. So the FBI asks Crystal if her and Patrick have any more than a business type relationship.
Right.
And Crystal adamantly denies any romantic
no,
relationship.
Not at all. Horse only.
Horses only. Exactly. They ask Crystal about Kelsey, and Crystal says she didn't know her, but she was aware of her disappearance from the news.
Right.
And then she basically ended the interview.
Right. She said, peace out, this is all I know.
So FBI starts looking into Crystal's background. They find out she's a mother of 2. She was once married to a man named Chad.
Okay.
But no longer is. They're divorced.
Right.
FBI contacts Chad to ask what he knows, because they just don't think that Crystal's telling them the exact truth.
Well,
and
because
yeah,
she couldn't have been. I mean, come on, let's be real.
and Chad has a very different story.
Definitely not a horse-only situation.
No. So Chad tells the FBI that Crystal and Patrick had dated prior to Kelsey and Patrick meeting.
Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Yep.
Yes. And Crystal met Patrick in 2006, so this is a long time ago.
Wow.
When she worked on a dude ranch for the summer. So Patrick, by all intents and purposes, was Crystal's first love.
Oh, okay.
The relationship was described as a very tumultuous roller coaster, making up, breaking up, making up, breaking up for years.
Right.
Crystal had an affair with Patrick in 2017, which is right before he met Kelsey. So before Kelsey. But that led to the end of Chad and Crystal's marriage.
Okay.
So it was this whole, I didn't hardly know him. He was a business partner.
They were married?
They weren't married.
Oh.
She was cheating on her husband Chad with Patrick.
Oh, I got you. Her other marriage, not their marriage together.
They were never married. Okay. But Chad and Crystal was, they were married and had the 2 kids.
Right.
Then in 2017, she basically got back with her ex-boyfriend, or cheated on him with her ex-boyfriend.
Right.
And Chad was not into it. He
right.
was like,
He's like, peace out. This is not for me. No thanks.
So, of course, now the FBI knows she's lying.
Right.
And then they decide to run that DNA, the unknown female DNA that they found in Kelsey's apartment.
Oh, no.
And they obtain a warrant for Crystal's DNA.
Yeah.
And for her home as well. And then they also reach out to the friend whose car she had borrowed to drive to Colorado.
Right.
So the girlfriend whose car she borrowed corroborates her story about her using the vehicle.
Okay.
And I'm calling her the girlfriend because I don't know her name.
Right.
She reports that the girlfriend also reports she keeps a gun in her vehicle.
Okay.
And on December 18th, after learning about that gun, they actually found her handgun under the seat where she said it would be.
Okay.
But when they inspected the gun, they discovered the gun had a round capacity of 17 bullets, but only 16 bullets were in the gun.
Oh,
and
so
there's one missing.
Unaccounted for.
And exactly, and the friend of Crystal's, whose car she borrowed, didn't know why a round would be missing. She had no explanation.
Why would just one round? It's not like they went out
shooting or something
for one round.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
So, of course, at this point, the FBI has a lot more information, and they decide we need to re-interview Crystal.
Yeah.
So, Crystal immediately asks for an attorney.
Good idea.
They did collect a buccal swab to compare to the DNA at the house.
Right.
But she did not interview. She wouldn't interview with them.
Right.
But a couple of days later, on December 20th, Crystal's attorney called and said Crystal would be willing to talk. And so they arrange a meeting with Crystal, and she basically just spills the beans.
She says the whole thing. If she couldn't.
So here we go.
Uh-oh.
So Crystal says she had gone down to Woodlynn Park, Colorado 3 times to kill Kelsey.
What?
The first time was in September of 2018. The plan was to do some kind of poisoned caramel macchiato coffee drink, which she found out was Kelsey's favorite coffee drink. Because Crystal was a nurse, she had access to certain medications.
Right.
So the first time Crystal went there, she knocked on the door of Kelsey's townhome.
Yep.
She tells her, this is the weirdest thing.
Okay.
So Crystal tells Kelsey, "Oh my gosh, I heard you saved my dog's life, and I just wanted to thank you with this coffee."
Oh my gosh. If that happened in my life, I'd
No.
be like, "Thank you so much," and down the drain.
Well,
This
I
is
guess
not normal.
Kelsey was like, "I didn't save any dog." Like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And she was like, "No, well, she was like, maybe I got the wrong story, but here, just take the coffee anyway." And she's like, "It's
Right.
a caramel macchiato."
Right.
And I'm sure she was just like, "Oh, that's odd. That's like
really
my favorite thing to drink." How
Right.
would she even know this?
Right, I would
'Cause-
think it's some kind of weird stalker or
Well,
something.
Kelsey does not know Crystal.
Right.
At all.
Right.
Now, at this point, Crystal says she actually did not put any drugs in the coffee.
Oh, she was just giving her a.
She
real
wanted to give her a once-over to see who her romantic rival was her
for
words.
the love of Pete.
So she says she, does that, drives back to Idaho, then goes back to Colorado again in October.
Right.
This time she brings a metal pipe at night. She
So
parks.
she's escalating.
Yeah, she parks.
Strongly.
And she hears a dog bark and it freaks her out and she just decides to abort her plan. She's like,
Abort.
I'm not going to do this, I'm scared. A week passes and Crystal returns to Kelsey's house with a baseball bat with plans to beat her.
Oh.
She sits outside her townhouse with the baseball bat and she hears like noises and she panics again and leaves. So
yeah, does Patrick know about this?
Well, so here we go. So of course the police are like, "Why are you doing this?"
Right.
And she said, "I did it for Patrick. He
For
asked me to
Patrick?
do this."
Oh, he asked her to do it.
So Patrick told Crystal that Kelsey was horrifically abusing their daughter.
Oh.
Now, Patrick knew that Crystal had been in some kind of situation, which we don't know exactly what it was, where she had a friend who had abused a child, and so it was something that she was really... I mean, everybody, of course, should be horrified by child abuse, but I think
Right.
it was like a way he knew he could manipulate her,
Right.
because she was extra sensitive to
that.
it.
Yeah.
So, by the way, there's no evidence that Kelsey ever abused that child.
Right.
This is
Right.
just...
This is
him.
him trying to get somebody to do his dirty work.
And he tells Crystal, or Patrick tells Crystal, that Kelsey is on the verge of killing their daughter. Like,
oh my
she's
gosh.
she's gonna kill her next time. Like, and he's basically saying, I need you to stop this for me.
Well, why can't he do it himself if it's really that? Why would you
coward?
Yeah, wouldn't though as a woman that flag you a little bit and you go,
Yeah,
just
like,
do it
why?
yourself.
Exactly.
Like, what?
So after the third
Why do I
time,
have to do
after
it?
Crystal went down there 3 times, she tells Patrick, she's like, "I'm kind of done with the death plots here.
Right, can't do it.
I've tried. It's not, not something I can do."
Right.
Now, in the meantime, she really does believe him to some extent that
Right.
she's abusing the child. So I'm not saying that makes it okay,
No.
because that's obviously not the way it should be handled. But
Right. No.
he's clearly manipulating her.
Right.
So about a month passes, and Crystal just says, I kind of hoped he would just forget about it.
Right.
At this point, you know, he had talked about breaking up with her and stuff like that, so he just thought maybe, because she wanted to be with him.
Right. So just break up and be with the other one.
Exactly.
Why? Why?
So out of the blue, about a month later, on November 22nd.
Yeah.
So we're talking right around the last time Kelsey's mom talked to her. It was like right after that. Patrick calls Crystal out of the blue and says, "You have a really big mess to clean up."
Oh my gosh.
So Kelsey, Crystal, drives down to Colorado again from Idaho.
Mm-hmm.
And she parks down the street from the house as to not have her car be seen.
Associated. Yeah.
And she says she walks into the townhome, and there is, and Patrick had given her a key, and there is blood everywhere from ceiling to floor in the house. It's just everywhere. So she puts on a painter suit, and she spends about 4 hours cleaning up the crime scene.
Wow.
While she's doing this, Patrick's calling her and tells her, so she did not kill.
Right.
She didn't kill Kelsey.
No, but she knows, knew it was a possibility.
Yeah.
She had 4 plots.
Three
plots. Okay, 3 plots.
Just 3, Laura.
Just 3, not 4. 3 death plots. Okay, what's that, like the limit? 3?
Yeah, that's where she draws her line.
3 is, I'm done at 3.
So, while she's doing this cleanup, Patrick's calling her and like, "Oh, you better not miss any spots.
What the?
You better be doing a good job." And then he tells her
just a bad dude.
to look for a tooth that he couldn't find.
Oh.
That he must have like knocked out of her mouth.
Oh my gosh, poor girl. I bet it was the most awful.
Oh, we'll get
way
into
to go.
that. It's terrible. So, they find surveillance of Patrick filling up 5 gallons of gas at a gas station in like gas cans.
Yeah.
Which is a little bit odd. And she said that he confessed to murdering her, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
And so after she did the cleanup, he had her body in like a black tote in the back of his truck. So after he killed her, he like dismembered her and put her in a tote and put her in the back of the truck. And then he went and bought a bunch of gas and ended up lighting her body on fire.
Oh.
Now, he describes to Crystal that night how he killed her.
Right.
So, now again, they had never actually broken up. So, in Kelsey's mind, they're together, everything's normal.
We're good. Yeah.
Brings her into the house, into her townhouse.
Right.
And he's like, "I got a surprise for you." And he puts a blindfold on her.
Yeah.
And he's like, "I've got all these scented candles."
Yeah.
And he's like, "I'm going to like put one in front of you and see if you can guess the scent of the candle."
Right.
So he's like trying to be all romantic.
Oh.
So she just has no idea what's coming.
Right.
And
she's blindfolded.
And he's got, like all these candles romantically set up and this whole deal. And then he just starts beating her with a baseball bat. And just beats her senseless, and her last words were, "Please stop."
Oh, yeah.
And her baby was in the other room.
Oh my gosh, what a psychopath.
Yeah, very psychotic. This reminds me of kind of that one case you covered about, I feel bad, I can't think of her name. The girl who went on the date and there was the guy hiding in her house.
In her house, yes, who jumped out. I can't think of her name either, which is awful.
Nicole Halpin, was that
seems
one?
Right, yep, yep.
Anyhow, so horrific death.
Yeah,
I mean, just as
awful.
bad as you can. And the point you think he's like, oh, he's being romantic.
Right,
he's
like maybe things are going to turn a corner.
And he's really, literally about to start beating you to death with a bat.
In a townhome, wouldn't you be afraid too? Like neighbors are gonna hear.
Well, can you not? I mean, you shouldn't kill anyone, but
Never,
you just shoot her instead.
Right.
Like, do you have to?
beat somebody to death.
It's just so horrible. And why?
Right.
He couldn't break up with her. They
Right.
weren't married. It's not
No.
like she's gonna take him to court for alimony.
Right.
I mean,
They're already. Right.
There's just the motive to me is very strange and unclear.
It doesn't make sense. Yeah.
So he burned her body. Her body has never been found to this day.
Do they have an idea of where it was burned and all of that?
Well, that part I thought was really weird, but the only thing I can think of is that it was burned and gotten rid of so horrifically and so
spread out, maybe.
Yeah, that they just were never able to establish where it was at.
Right.
Now, Crystal does say during the cleanup that she intentionally left some blood spots.
Oh, wow.
Because she wanted them to know something had happened to Kelsey.
So in the end, she felt bad.
She did have a conscience.
But...
and then they used her phone after to make it appear like she was alive. So that text message that her mom had got after she had butt dialed her,
right.
saying, I can't talk to you because I'm busy or whatever, call you tomorrow.
Right.
She was already dead at that point.
Right.
So Patrick was finally arrested shortly after that. This is like right before Christmas of 2018, and they had still not found her body, but based on Crystal's testimony,
right.
They had a pretty good case against him.
Right.
The trial started 11 months later. I think a lot of people were taken aback just at how normal looking Patrick is and was. I'm gonna pull up a picture for you.
Like it shocked.
And not that killers always look like killers,
no.
but that's him.
Yeah, he does look pretty just average Joe-ish.
Yes. And let's see. Kelsey. Sorry, guys. I'm just showing her some pictures. If you want to look too, you sure can. That's Kelsey.
Oh, she's a pretty girl.
And that's Crystal right there.
Oh, wow.
So Crystal's, I think her maiden name was Lee.
Okay.
But then her married name was Kinney, and she had gotten divorced around that time. So,
wow.
Or right before that. So that's why she's called Crystal Lee in some news media.
It's just so...
So, of course, they need Crystal, without her body especially, they need Crystal's testimony.
Yeah.
For the case.
Absolutely.
So, of course, they want to bring criminal charges against Crystal also, but they have to kind of walk that line of needing her testimony as well.
They don't have a case at all.
Really, not without her, they don't.
No.
Now, Patrick starts getting himself in trouble in jail, though, because he starts asking other inmates to kill witnesses.
See, he just can't stop.
And you have to imagine this guy had psychopathic tendencies leading up to this that just he had never acted on.
That we know of. Maybe he has.
That's true.
I mean...
but it's odd because it's, like with the Brian Kohlberger situation, like I'm not saying it's okay, but I get that type of like, I've been rejected by the world and now I'm going to lash out and do something awful.
Just completely insane.
I'm not saying I get it, but it's something you can wrap your head around in terms of like, there are people that have been so, in their eyes, mistreated by the world for so many years that they snap.
Right.
This, I can't even wrap my head around a little bit.
It doesn't make any sense. So yeah, you want to be with this gal, just leave. You want to be with Crystal, leave Kelsey. And have your parenting arrangement.
And I think, they think his motive had to do with, like, he didn't want to share custody of his daughter. But it's like...
But he what?
It's not the end of the world.
No.
So, of course, Cheryl and her husband, I can't remember her dad's name, Cheryl's Kelsey's mom, and dad and brother, they were all in court. The jury only deliberated for 3 hours.
Oh.
But like I had said about Patrick asking other inmates to kill witnesses, so they had actually him written on a napkin, so they had proof of it. It wasn't like another inmate said he asked me to do this and they couldn't prove it.
Give me time off.
They actually like had him on video writing on this napkin he wanted Crystal killed and her mom and brother killed.
Oh, for the love of Pete.
So he got 156 years with no chance of parole.
That's a long time.
Crystal Kinney, I believe, took a plea deal in exchange for like testifying.
Yes.
And she got 3 years for tampering with evidence. Now I read about a year or so into her incarceration, she had to be resentenced due to some new laws or something.
Oh, sure.
So she ended up only serving about a year and then was released.
Okay.
And I believe Kelsey's daughter is in care of her parents.
Oh, that's good. I mean, at least, like, keep that baby away from that family. You know what I mean?
Kidding.
Like,
because, you know, his mom didn't like her.
Right.
So there was there's no proof that his mom was involved, but if you have someone kind of in your ear saying negative things about someone, you kind of wonder.
Yeah.
So.
Right. You kind of wonder if that could have played a small part anyways. Yeah. I think that.
Ultimately, I don't think Crystal would have ever killed her.
No, I think Crystal couldn't do it. I think she was trying to sort of bring herself to it for him, but she ultimately couldn't.
Maybe if she had some proof that Kelsey was actually abusing the daughter, they looked into that just because they had to. There was no proof that she had done anything to that child ever.
Right, and she probably hadn't.
Of course, her parents were like, they had to talk about that in court, and they're like, they're trampling on her reputation.
Right.
Even the idea of that.
Right.
Because she
wanted to be a mom. It wasn't like she was.
They just said she was just not that type of person.
Right. Who's
she
going
wasn't
to hurt a baby
person. Yeah.
She's gonna hurt a baby. Yeah.
So that's if you wanna, there's a really good People magazine investigates covered this story.
Yeah, that is.
I believe Dateline or 48 Hours. There's a lot. It's been covered a lot, but
I'm really glad they put the pieces together. Not that it was gonna be,
to me, that what really stood out was the blindfolding and this. You think you're in this loving, normal relationship that has its problems,
right?
But all relationships do to some extent.
Yeah.
And then that he, it isn't like he's abused you in the past and you guys were fighting. It was just like, I'm sure in her mind she's like, what is going on?
Right.
And they're saying, it tells you how nice of a person she was that she says, she said, please stop.
Right.
Please she had, had the, to say please.
Right.
So anyway, that wraps up the case.
Oh, that's
such a lovely
case.
Tale.
Yeah, there are some really awful people in the world, and I just, thankfully, justice sounds like justice has been done. So
I don't get. And obviously motive is one of those weird things where I just don't think. Yeah, he blindfolded Kelsey Berreth with a sweater for a guessing game, then hit her with a bat.
Yeah, see that. Why it wasn't just so that he could get sole custody? Did his mother tell him he needed to get rid of her? I mean, who knows?
I feel like there's got to be more to the story.
I'm sure there is,
unless he just was a psychopath that wanted to kill somebody. But that's my whole thing is like, he wanted Crystal to do it initially.
Right.
That leads me to believe that maybe he didn't want to.
He couldn't bring himself to do it, so he wanted somebody else to do it. But then when she failed, he felt like he didn't have a choice.
But that's like, why did you want her dead so badly?
Right.
I don't get that part.
No, that doesn't make no sense. Oh, poor mama.
Anyhow, Thank you for listening.
Thank you. We will be back again for
Hopefully
another...
Laura will come back so you don't have to
I
endure
will.
my solo episodes.
No, I will come back, and I'll have a case.
Otherwise, I might have to start having the kids be co-hosts, and that would not...
I don't know. It could be interesting.
They might talk about random stuff that has nothing to do with any kind of...
Minecraft. They might talk about Minecraft or Roblox. They could talk about Roblox.
Talking about my 4-year-old daughter loves Roblox, and I don't even know what the heck it is. I don't know.
My 7-year-old is also in love with Roblox.
We had to
really get it
take it off of her Kindle because she bought a bunch of things. All of a sudden, one day I looked at her bank account, and there were tons of purchases, and I was like, "What is this?"
Oh yeah, they do that.
And then thankfully they reversed them, but
then you have to stop. I mean, we've learned to stop on all things. Make a beforehand confirmation.
Yeah, no, we usually do, but I think
it's hard. It's easy to miss a device or whatever. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, we hope that your week is not bleak.
Yes, we hope you have a lovely week with nice non-psychopathic people.
But we all probably walk by psychopaths every day. We probably do.
Yeah, we don't even know.
Next time you're walking into the store, look at the guy next to you and think, could be a psychopath.
Right.
I like to say it psychopath.
Psychopath.
It's a psychopath. All right. Well, we'll see you next time. When that will be, your guess is as good as mine.
Have a great week. Thank you.
Ta-ta.